Around the state of Iowa today, announcing his candidacy for the Senate. Rourke is the first Democrat challenger for Republican Charles Grassley. The Iowa House passed the so-called Clean Indoor Act bill today. The law would require designated non-smoking areas in all public buildings in the state of Iowa. Brooks Humphreys will report on House debate on the bill, and he'll have local reaction at 6. Join us in 30 minutes.
The U.S. orders 2 aircraft carriers from the 6th Fleet to flex their muscles near Libya. Philippine President Marcos denounces charges he fabricated his World War II record. And the Urban League charges the Reagan administration with a Rambo-like attack on civil rights.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening, I'm Roger Mudd in Washington. Tom Brokaw is on assignment. To make sure Colonel Gaddafi of Libya got the message, the United States served notice today that warplanes from its Mediterranean fleet will soon begin conducting flight operations near his airspace. News of the operation, to begin next week, surfaced when the Navy notified civilian air traffic officials in Tripoli. Here's Robin Lloyd at the White House.
20 U.S. warships, including 2 aircraft carriers and the Yorktown, the electronic warfare control ship, are now moving north of Libya. The Saratoga battle group entered the Mediterranean last week. Pentagon officials say U.S. fighter jets will operate within an area some 130 miles north of the Libyan coast, staying within international airspace. But Pentagon officials say during the week-long exercise, the fighter jets may fly over the contested Gulf of Sidra, which Libya claims as its territory. The U.S. doesn't recognize that claim. 2 weeks ago, when Libyan fighter jets intercepted a Navy surveillance plane some 120 miles off the coast of Libya, U.S. fighters like these scrambled off the Coral Sea. U.S. officials say they expect the Libyans will be doubly careful now. They are making it clear that the exercise is intended to warn Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi to back off his support of terrorists. Still, many military experts are critical, saying it underscores the administration's inability to strike back.
The likelihood is that nothing will happen. And ironically, that will highlight our impotence because there will have been a great display of large and costly ships and many aircraft and absolutely no effect.
In the midst of these maneuvers, Pentagon officials say Soviet intelligence gathering ships are closely monitoring the U.S. fleet, providing information to the Libyans. 3 other Soviet warships, Pentagon officials say, are directly off the coast of Libya.
Although they are calling this a routine exercise, administration officials clearly want to step up the pressure on Gaddafi. One official saying we had 3 choices: do nothing, go to war, or keep a highly visible military presence in the region. The last one, this official said, keeps all our options open. Robin Lloyd, NBC News at the White House.
For years, there have been allegations that Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos had played fast and loose with his World War II record. That charge tends to drive Marcos up the wall. But today, the New York Times, citing official records now in the National Archives, reported that the U.S. Army concluded Marcos' claim that he had headed a guerrilla unit during the Japanese occupation was fraudulent and absurd. We have 2 reports tonight. First, Ann Garrels in Washington.
Throughout his career, President Marcos has portrayed himself as a war hero. In the current re-election campaign, he has repeatedly said he was a guerrilla leader in World War II fighting the Japanese. This is intended to prove he would be better able to fight the communist insurgents than his opponent, Corazon Aquino. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines between 1942 and 1945, Marcos claims to have led a guerrilla unit of 8,200 men. But after the war and repeated investigations, the U.S. Army concluded no such unit existed. The Army called Marcos's claims a malicious criminal act. These documents, long held secret by the Army, declassified when they were donated to the National Archives, were only recently discovered by Alfred McCoy, an American historian, who passed them on to the New York Times. A U.S. officer who supervised guerrillas in areas where Marcos says he was operating agrees with the Army's findings.
I feel that if President Marcos had a large armed guerrilla force, that it would have certainly been recognized by the U.S. government and the Philippine government.
Marcos also claims to have received several U.S. wartime decorations. The U.S. Army has denied giving him many of these. In a 1982 ceremony, though, Defense Secretary Weinberger did present him with 3. The U.S. Army has been unable to find any of the original citations. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has called for an inquiry.
The State Department has had no comment on Marcos's war record.
U.S. officials want to avoid any charges that they're interfering in the presidential elections, but they're certainly interested in how these reports affect the outcome. Ann Garrels, NBC News, the State Department.
President Marcos was in the middle of a long campaign speech when he hit back. He charged that the opposition, crazy individuals, and the foreign press were responsible for the report. During the war, he said, the opposition collaborated with the Japanese while he was fighting them.
Now they have the nerve to question my war record.
Tonight, in a hastily mimeographed statement, his office said the report was reeking with malice and the most vicious form of black propaganda. It charged that the report was a clear case of character assassination and a fabrication of the worst kind. The government statement offered no factual rebuttal. Questions about the president's heroics have been raised before. Never have they had any effect on the official record.
For national recovery.
Marcos' campaign commercials contain warm reminiscences about the president's war record.
He was still nursing the wounds he sustained from the Battle of Bataan. But Marcos kept on.
Often, Marcos tells campaign crowds about his old war wounds. Just yesterday, the president displayed an old war buddy and talked about eluding Japanese patrol boats with him. Marcos gave his watch to the veteran, who was later returned to his hospital bed. Already, challenger Corazon Aquino is hammering away at Marcos' version of Philippine history.
I ask you, how do you deal with an inveterate liar?
With 2 weeks left in the campaign, the war record is likely to become an issue. Steve Mallory, NBC News, Manila.
The Marcos story also generated heat on Capitol Hill, where a New York financial advisor said he had been told repeatedly that Mrs. Marcos owned 4 valuable pieces of New York City real estate. The witness, Barry Knox, testified before a House subcommittee but refused to allow cameras to record his testimony. The subcommittee chairman, Democrat Solars of New York, says he's trying to find out whether the Marcos use U.S. foreign aid for their personal investments. Also coming up on our program tonight, Dan Molina tells us about Krista McAuliffe, a teacher who is about to get a higher education. And Dennis Murphy reports on the tradition and the business of gambling on the Super Bowl.
Good posture. You don't think about it until you realize you can lose it. 1 out of 4 women may, due in part to a calcium deficiency. That's why there's Posture, a new calcium supplement. Without enough calcium, bones can become porous and weak, but Posture taken daily can help them stay strong, and it's specially made not to produce gas. Don't wait. Eat right, exercise, and take new Posture now to help assure good posture later.
The new 5000 series from Audi. The 5000 Turbo Quattro, Turbo, Sedan, Wagon. 5,000 reasons to own an Audi. Make that 5001. Now available with anti-lock braking systems. Audi, the art of engineering.
Ooh, fry it up, dress it up, pop, pop, pop it up. Do you love it all? Mazola's got no cholesterol. Make it up, pop it up, pop, pop, pop it up. Do you love it all? Mazola's got no cholesterol. So crisp it, do, toss it, do, pop, pop, pop it, rock, rock, rock it, make it, do, kebab it up. Do you love it all? Mazola's got no cholesterol at all. No cholesterol at all.
The National Urban League today released a harsh assessment of the Reagan administration's treatment of black America. As NBC's Robert Hager reports, it charged the administration is waging war on the nation's civil rights laws and affirmative action programs.
The number of black teachers in the Jackson, Michigan school system went from just a handful to 18% under an affirmative action program. But when white teachers had to be laid off to preserve the black gains, the Reagan administration joined in a suit to stop that. One of many cases in which the administration has opposed affirmative action programs and hiring quotas. Today, the Urban League, in its report on the state of black America, called the administration a Rambo-like destroyer of civil rights gains. The League's chief executive, John Jacob.
If there is any single message we want to send the president today, it is this. hands-off affirmative action.
The president, in his regular radio address last Saturday, talked about minority hiring.
We oppose the use of quotas. We want a colorblind society, a society that, in the words of Dr. King, judges people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Jacob was particularly critical of that remark.
For the administration to associate the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with the attempt to destroy affirmative action is obscene.
Jacob also took issue with the president's statements that blacks have enjoyed a measure of prosperity since he took office. The report said that last year, while the national poverty rate declined slightly, black poverty was higher than it was 5 years ago. While the nation's unemployment rate declined to 7%, black unemployment is still 15%, and for black teenaged males, a staggering 41%. While nationally family income rose, family income for blacks declined. As the economic recovery continued, the report said, black Americans slipped further and further to the rear of the parade. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
The treatment of blacks in South Africa has become the center of controversy in one California community this week, but as NBC correspondent Don Oliver reports, it isn't just another California community, it's Beverly Hills.
The citizens of Beverly Hills dislike anything which disturbs the tranquility of their palm-lined streets. Many have been upset by the demonstrations against the presence of the South African consulate in Beverly Hills and by the weekly protests in the council chambers of City Hall.
So I would like for you to actually take a position in closing the South African consulate.
Tuesday night, the council voted to ban all signs, placards, and banners from the council chambers. But at the same time, it adopted a resolution asking the State Department to remove the South African consulate from the city.
I think it's an appropriate thing for us to say that we don't want them here.
The South African Consul General doesn't think apartheid was really the issue.
I personally think it's a question of being badgered. People, I mean, this is the outspoken tactic.
The mayor denies that.
Oh, I think it was a moral issue and a humanitarian decision that we made.
Beverly Hills acquired the South African consulate by default 5 years ago, when the South Africans wanted to move from San Francisco, but the city of Los Angeles wouldn't have them. As it happened, Bishop Desmond Tutu was in Beverly Hills for a luncheon today. He was delighted with developments.
I think it is an important thing to have happened, and I'm glad for it and commend the authorities of this part for doing so.
In Washington, the State Department spokesman wouldn't admit knowing anything about the controversy.
No, but let me take a look at that. I don't have anything on that.
The South African consulate has heard nothing officially and plans to stay right here on Wilshire Boulevard. Don Oliver, NBC News, Beverly Hills.
In South Africa today, blacks fought against blacks in a new outbreak of tribal violence not far from the port city of Durban. At least 30 people were killed, another 40 were wounded. It was the latest clash between the Pondo and Zulu tribes over land and scarce jobs. The Zulus say the Pondos are squatting illegally in the Zulu homeland. Today's fighting began when hundreds of Pondos attacked a home and a store owned by a Zulu. Police were sent in to break it up. They collected weapons and picked up the dead. The French ambassador to South Yemen said today that about 10,000 people had died since rival communist factions began fighting 10 days ago. The ambassador gave his estimate while he was being evacuated from South Yemen. Other reports say as many as 15,000 have died. For its part, the United States said today it had warned the Soviet Union not to intervene in the South Yemen war. A prosecutor in Rome today issued an international warrant for the arrest of Abu Nidal. He's the Palestinian extremist linked to a string of recent terrorist attacks, including last month's airport massacres in Rome and in Vienna. Investigators have said that the gunman who survived the airport attacks indicated that Abu Nidal was the mastermind.
Graduation rehearsal. You wouldn't believe it.
I'm really gonna miss you. Did you decide which job to take?
Yeah, I'm going with that subsidiary of Dow. I could actually be helping high-risk heart patients.
Yes, you can make a difference in what tomorrow brings.
Pretty special.
So are you.
Lets you do great things.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. And if your child had a cough, she'd get just what the doctor orders. But for your cough, you play doctor at home, even trying medicine you originally bought for your child. You need one of the adult formulas from Vicks. For the coughs adults get, with the strength adults need. Formula 44 for coughs, 44D for coughs with congestion, and 44M for coughs with congestion and a raw, irritated throat. The adult formulas. You can't buy anything more effective.
The adult formulas, from Vicks, of course.
Traps. I hate them, and they don't always work. So I use Decon rat and mouse killers. They're dead sure to kill. Rats and mice simply eat Decon and die. So why take chances? Use Decon baits. Dead sure to kill.
Now there's an antacid that's ideal for us women. New Calcitrel. It not only neutralizes more acid than Malox Plus or regular Mylanta, it gives us even more calcium than Tums. New Calcitrel. It's the ideal antacid for women.
The countdown is underway tonight at Cape Canaveral towards Sunday's scheduled launch of the Shuttle Challenger, a liftoff that will carry America's first teacher into space. The 7 crew members, including social studies teacher Krista McAuliffe, left Houston this afternoon for Cape Canaveral. They'll spend 6 days in space, launch a satellite, and look at Halley's Comet. And for her students back home, it will be school from space. As correspondent Dan Molina reports tonight, it's a school lesson that's been months in the making.
Krista McAuliffe looks every inch an astronaut these days, and her crewmates treat her like one of the gang. This was a little trek up to break the sound barrier with Dick Scobie, her mission commander.
They could have very easily said, oh, you know, there's a teacher, what are we going to do with her? She's going to get in the way, or we've got to plan things around her. If I needed help during the lessons, if I needed an extra pair of hands. I mean, they've just been so wonderful. I really do feel part of the crew.
For several months now, doctors have been jabbing and probing her, zipping her up in black bags to see if small dark places scare her. She's gone through all sorts of training in shuttle simulators, and she's learned a few cold, hard facts about what to expect.
I didn't realize it'd be so slippery.
The shuttle's small. And if you kind of think of it as being in maybe a 6-man tent with 7 people in it, and it rains for 6 days, that's the environment that you're in.
It's all a very big change from life in Concord, New Hampshire. This was the day she left home for 4.5 months of training. It seemed especially tough to say goodbye to her daughter, Caroline.
Love you. All right. See you later, alligator.
Okay, let's get dinner ready.
Yes.
Okay.
Life without mother in the McAuliffe household. A new adventure for Krista's husband, Steve, an attorney.
Okay. Frozen cook. Open that thing up.
He's doing a super job. I mean, he took over single parenting without missing a beat. The kids are doing well. He's doing well. I mean, he's doing so well that when I came home the last time, I walked in the kitchen to do something, and he kind of looked and he said, "Excuse me," he said, "we don't do that way anymore." I said, "Pardon me."
She's part astronaut now, but still a teacher first. There's an elaborate plan for her to teach from space and to hook up a direct link with her old school. Much of the country will see this ultimate field trip, and Krista says it's just the kind of recognition teachers need.
And because they feel so good about themselves and the morale is high, I'm hoping that other people are going to look at that and say, they do a very important job.
She'll earn a place in history when Challenger lifts off. She'll be a celebrity for a while. Then it'll all be over. Krista McAuliffe will be back in New Hampshire, back in her classroom, but she'll always be known as the teacher in space. Dan Molina, NBC News at the Johnson Space Center, Houston.
A former Washington messenger pleaded guilty to espionage today, Randy Jeffries admitting that he had passed U.S. secrets to the Soviet Union. In exchange for the guilty plea, the government dropped other charges against him. Jeffries faces up to 10 years in prison. A federal judge in Arizona today refused to throw out charges against 11 members of the Sanctuary movement, even though he did find the government had acted improperly in its prosecution. According to the judge, an immigration agent failed to tell all he knew about the investigation. But the judge said that did not warrant dismissal of the case. The Sanctuary members are charged with conspiring to smuggle Central Americans into this country.
Do I hear 3800? Santa Fe?
AT&T is in antiques. With AT&T Alliance Teleconferencing Service, an antique dealer can easily hold an auction with clients all over the country at the same time, as clear as if they're in the same room.
All right, Chicago, it's yours. Now,
another reason to choose AT&T long-distance services. Talk with us. AT&T, the right choice.
Announcing the end of the noisy dishwasher, the Whirlpool Quiet Wash system is so quiet, you might think it only babies your dirty dishes. Caresses your silverware. But this Power Clean Energy Saver model gets your dishes remarkably clean.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
If only Whirlpool could make the rest of your world this quiet.
Whirlpool makes it easier for you.
Ooh, I've got an awful headache. Where's my extra strength Bufferin?
Oh, I borrowed it from my back, all this lifting. Then Jim took it for a stiff elbow.
Backache? Stiff elbows? Jim, got my Bufferin?
Dave took it. Sore pitching arm.
My Bufferin for all that.
For headaches and a whole lot more, Extra Strength Bufferin goes to the heart of the pain with the strongest dose of pain reliever you can buy. Nothing relieves more aches and pains.
Ah, my Bufferin.
For headaches and a whole lot more, Extra Strength Bufferin, also in regular strength from Bristol-Myers.
Fire broke out today in a luxury hotel in New Delhi, India. When it was over, at least 37 people had died, including an American businessman. 40 others were injured. It broke out in a basement banquet hall and gutted the lower floors of the hotel. But smoke went all the way to the top, and it was the smoke that killed most of the victims. Survivors said neither the sprinklers nor the fire alarms were working. As we have seen, the presidential election campaign in the Philippines is being watched closely in the United States, and that's the subject of John Chancellor's commentary tonight.
The Philippines is a very important country to the United States because of where it's located. Asia is where the future is. Americans do more business with countries along the Pacific Rim than with the rest of the world combined. The United States has two goals in the Philippines: to hold on to its military and naval bases and to keep the local communists from taking over. President Marcos is doing a bad job of fighting the communists, so some in the American government are tilting toward his opponent in the presidential election, Mrs. Corazon Aquino. They hope that if Marcos is out, it will be easier to contain the communists. But there could be problems with Mrs. Aquino, an attractive but totally inexperienced politician. She says she wants the American bases removed, although she's not sure when. So here's the American dilemma. Backing Marcos will encourage the communists. Backing Mrs. Aquino could lose the bases. About all the United States can do in this situation is to insist that the election be squeaky clean. Better to have the Filipinos make the choice for themselves than to have Marcos steal it. And there's another reason. If the election is fraudulent, the U.S. Congress may not approve the foreign aid Marcos needs to stay in power and to maintain those American bases. Yet, as of now, Marcos is playing dirty politics, muzzling the press, ordering outside observers away from polling places. There has been violence. 8 of her supporters have been murdered. All of his are alive. Some story. The election is 2 weeks away, the stakes for the future are very high, and no one knows what will happen. Which is commentary for this evening.
Israel's Prime Minister Shimon Peres said today that a little bit of progress had been made in arranging Middle East peace talks. He made the comment on NBC's Today program from London, where he has met several times recently with U.S. Mideast envoy Richard Murphy. Jordan's King Hussein has also met with Murphy in London.
Where you been?
Busy. My son's home with the family.
From the city? Must have cost a bundle.
He just got a big promotion.
Your son?
Yep. The business was growing too fast. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing.
He finally knows his right hand from his left?
He knew IBM could help. They've got computers and software for any size business. He put computers on everyone's desk. Use something called telecommunications to tie all their offices together. Now everyone knows what's going on, from LA to New York.
No one understands what's going on in New York. How'd your son know IBM did all that?
He's a smart boy.
Smart boy, I'll say. Smart boy. Who'd he take after?
Europe, ancient, civilized, full of glories, but for some Americans full of fear. Living with Terrorism, Monday on American Almanac.
Hi, tough trail.
Yeah, but the view's great.
Join you?
Sure.
Milk in your trail mix?
New Horizon Trail Mix cereal.
Great idea.
Great taste. Kind of off the beaten path.
Apples?
crunchy almonds, light crispy grains.
Coconut, plump raisins.
Is this a date?
I think it's more like a chance meeting.
New Post Horizon Trail Mix cereal. Taste that's off the beaten path.
Let me help.
As if you didn't know, just 3 days till the Super Bowl. But for millions of fans around the country, it might well be called the Bettor's Bowl, the gambling event of the year. NBC's Dennis Murphy reports tonight that the money involved, legal and illegal, may reach into the billions.
The biggest event we have betting-wise is the Super Bowl.
No Bears, of course. Bears.
Bet $100.
You want to get in the pool?
It's almost un-American not to have a bet on the Super Bowl.
You can play the horses, high lie, even take some action on an armadillo race. But the Super Bowl is America's favorite wager.
Patriots, Bears. Bears get the game and Patriots get the money.
Legal bookmakers in Nevada expect to handle $25 to $40 million in Super Bowl bets. But that's nothing compared to the office pools and illegal bets, where it's estimated $1 to $2 billion are bet. It has become an international wager. British bookies and bettors like the Bears.
Well, I'd rather go for the Bears because there's no doubt they are the team of the year.
I don't really think the Patriots have got much chance, to be truthful, but at 4 to 1, I couldn't refute it, could I?
In Las Vegas, it's not whether you won or lost or even how you played the game. It's whether you covered the spread. The point spread here has the Bears 10 to 11-point favorites. That means if you bet the Bears, you don't collect unless they beat the Patriots by more than the spread, the 10 or 11 points. Some betting cards offer more than picking a winner. You can bet who'll make the first fumble, miss the most field goals, even whether William the Refrigerator Perry will score a touchdown. But if you're the mayor of either of the opposing cities, you simply bet winner take all, or this year, winner eat all.
White Castle hamburgers, Eli's cheesecake, and deep dish pizza.
I'm thinking of sending those lobsters down to you, even though we beat you on Sunday.
How about that? That's very gracious.
That's the kind of guy you are, Harold.
And Illinois Savings and Loan has its own point spread. Buy a certificate of deposit at 8.25%, and if the Bears win Sunday, the interest rate goes up.
I hope they win by a big majority, so my CD pays off.
Super Bowl money will flow right until the kickoff. Then, for the 60 minutes of play, the bettor can be a fan.
Yeah, man, we're number one. Ray!
Dennis Murphy, NBC News, Las Vegas.
That's Nightly News for Thursday. I'm Roger Mudd in Washington. Good night.
Coming up tonight from News Center 13.
The smoking issue causes heated debate today in the Iowa House.
Cab companies want rate hikes to cover insurance costs.
And a Democratic challenger to Senator Grassley throws his hat into the ring.
These stories and more, plus Mike with weather and Jeff with sports, all coming up next.
The University of Osteopathic Medicine has 10 family practice clinics in the Des Moines area. The osteopathic physicians in our clinics provide a variety of medical services, including family practice and all medical specialties. The university clinics provide a complete staff of doctors dedicated to serving your health care needs.
For information or appointments, call 280-WELL, W-E-L-L.
Herbert, pay attention.
A lesson for Herb, the one man who's never tasted a Burger King burger.
This is Burger King, Herbert. Let's open the door. See Jane. CJ, take your order for a flame-broiled Whopper. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Now taste. Run, Herbert, run.
Hey, Herb, get a juicy flame-broiled burger for just 39 cents. A big beefy cheeseburger for just 49 cents at Burger King now. Come on in, Herb.
Imagine Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volvo, Jaguar, all in one showroom. Dave Ostrom Imports, Des Moines.
You're watching WHO-TV Des Moines, Iowa's news center. And now, Scott Pope and Susie Robinette, Chief Meteorologist Mike Lozano, and Jeff Beimpour with sports. This is News Center 13 at 6.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Smoking or not smoking?
That's a question we're always asked in an airplane or a restaurant, but soon you may be asked that question in virtually all public buildings. Today, the Iowa House gave approval to the so-called Iowa Clean Indoor Air Act. It would mandate designated non-smoking areas in almost all indoor public facilities in the state of Iowa. Brooks Humphreys has more in this report.
All over the country in the past few years, the rules against smoking in public places have been becoming increasingly restrictive. There's already a law in Iowa allowing the designation of smoking and non-smoking areas in restaurants, waiting rooms, offices, and other public places. The law being considered in the Iowa House would require such a designation. The bill's floor manager said the measure respects the rights of smokers.